The meeting to order. If everyone would stand up and join me for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we are here to discuss our budget review and overall, but I believe we have a few people here that would like to speak on some of our items that are on there. So, Mr. Lewis.
I can go first. Is this my microphone?
Yes, we got you all ready and set up.
Hello?
Oh. No, they're all right.
Hello, hello.
Oh, I just heard something. No. Oh, yeah. We thought that was working. Sorry.
Oh, that is now.
Yeah, it's hard to read.
Hello.
Whoa, there you are.
Now it's working.
Hello, I'm Ed Zewis. I know a lot of you. I don't know some of you. I sent you all an email. I'm here to speak to save the science job. I'm not going to read what I sent to you. I trust that you read it, you looked at it. I'm going to go over some high points, and I'm going to try to keep it short. I believe we need to keep the science teacher position at Oak Hill High School. I believe we've built a program of science that allows, this year we'll have up to 30 students who can earn college credit in anatomy and physiology, AP Bio, or physics dual enrollment. We have over half the senior class taking a fourth year of science. We're bringing in a bigger class next year. We're losing 82, I think, and bringing in 100. The numbers are devastating if we cut a full teacher. And once we cut that full teacher, I fear we'll never get it back. I believe, and I didn't bring this up today, in 2012, when Mr. Eustache and Jill Pruitt left, we replaced them with one teacher. And now we're back trying to cut science again. And if you look at the requirements, and this is where I'm going to just go through this sheet. Students are required to take 3 years of science. In order to have a lab-based science that allows for scheduling, that's 6 classes for every year. So that's 18 of our teaching classes. That's 3 full-time teachers teaching the required classes, not even talking about credit recovery or lower level where kids may need to have smaller classes. We have offerings in STEM that are starting to grow, like robotics, that are starting to take away from our science curriculum, but the students are interested, and this is 21st century learning. And that leaves so few electives for the marine science program we're building. For physics, if a high school doesn't have physics, many kids, and now I'm talking about the 4-year, 5-year science students who want to get into a high-level college, you need to have a physics class, or you need to have an AP Bio class. And we have lots of students who are taking nursing, or want to be nurses, or want to do X-ray technology and anatomy and physiology. Oh, sorry. Anatomy and physiology is very important to those students. And numbers go up and numbers come down. We're losing 82 seniors. We're gaining 100 ninth graders. I just don't see how we can have another cut to the science and sustain the electives that we're trying to give our seniors who want to take a fourth year of science, which is more than half this year. Plus, we have juniors taking 2 sciences. So I'm asking you to reconsider that. I'm begging you to reconsider that. We need to keep that science position. And I'm here to answer questions. Yes?
Well, my thought, Mrs. Lewis, is what would the science program look like without this position in it? And I mean, I know as far as class size would probably go up, and what wouldn't we be able to offer if we were down 1 science teacher?
Class sizes in sophomore and juniors, because of the bar program, 9th grade sizes are pretty much figured out. Class sizes for the sophomores and juniors might go up a lot, and then we wouldn't be able to. We have a couple classes to help struggling students, and those are below 10, 6, but they need to be that size. Maybe we don't need 2 of them, and maybe we can cut 1. I can see finding 1 or 2 spots to cut, but I cannot see finding 6 without losing marine science, anatomy and physiology, or AP bio, or physics, or 2 or 3 of those. And those are the electives that we've spent time building at Oak Hill for the juniors and seniors who may not go to LRTC and need other courses.
Marco is also, they've been working on the schedule for next year, so he could speak to it as well. Do you want to speak to what you worked on today?
So as Mr. Zua said, a cut to the science department does affect obviously class size and the offerings that we will be able to give our students. Taking a look at the offerings that we have at this point in time, because kids are just signing up for classes now, so we don't have like specific numbers for specific classes at this point. Well, the reality is that I look at it being a potential cut, in the sense of consolidating classes. And so, as Mr. Zulis said, we're looking at, consolidation or elimination of some of our classes that might need for students who are struggling in science. And so they would go back into the regular offerings that we have. And as Mr. Zulis said, I do believe that would be some of our upper level offerings that potentially would be affected by it. And there are ways to continue to kind of offer those things. It may be, if we're looking at AP, we do this with micro and macroeconomics, where we offer them every other year instead of every year to help, obviously with that situation. But at least in my initial review of what we're looking at as far as those pieces are concerned, that's what I would see as far as the potential effect in the science department.
Vicki?
Am I correct that right now we don't have anyone filling this position?
So right now, yeah, and I was going to clarify that when I went over things. So what happened is we had a health position open. And so when that opened, one of the science teachers that we had hired had an interest in health. So they moved to the health position. So when talking with the high school around consolidating then, which was right around, I think, when you were switching into second semester, right? So we really talked hard about, can you consolidate? Well, where schedules are already in place, they had a substitute in there for a while, and then the substitute wanted to change and do something different. So we really looked hard to maintain what we had this year, knowing that this would be a possible reduction, knowing that this was going to be a tough budget season. Those things played into it. So in working with the middle school, and we have an interventionist at the middle school who's certified in science and did teach at one time in that department. So we spoke to her about going to the high school as kind of a long-term sub to go help the high school in meeting this year, knowing she would go back to the intervention meeting, that position in the fall. So that's where it is right now.
So we've done without an interventionist?
Correct, at the middle school, yes. So when looking at the need and what was the high need, we chose to move that.
Okay.
So just to reiterate, looking at the high need, we filled that position because we couldn't consolidate. And I think it would be devastating to try to lose 6 positions. 6 teaching, one position is 6 teaching classes. And that's why I'm standing in front of you. I was shocked 3 weeks ago when I heard this. And I know the budget, the meetings about the budget weren't about teaching positions the last couple of weeks. So I wanted to address you this week. So that is my plea. I'm sending out a plea from me and my department and students. I believe that we need to save that position.
So, Katie, what would be the impact to the budget in this position if we're already filling it with a real science teacher? Am I right?
Well, she's certified
Well-
science. There's no commitment that she would remain in this
No,
position.
I know, but what I'm
Okay.
saying is in the budget, that position is
Correct.
paid for in last year's budget.
You mean this current budget?
this
Yeah, the
current
position
budget.
was there and somebody
Okay.
left
So
mid-year.
what are we saving by cutting that position?
106,000,
106,000?
correct.
Okay, depending on where we hire the person, what they
Right.
take for electives.
That's what
For
we
insurance.
reduced the budget for that position, was 106,000. Because it's the benefits, yes. Mhm. Yep.
Okay.
Any other further questions or discussion? Thank you, Mrs. Mills.
I mean, just a point of discussion, thinking about the STEM programs that are happening at the middle school, knowing that you're going to have a prime group of kids that have been participating in pretty significant STEM, I would hate for them not to have the same opportunities when they get to high school.
Right.
Meaning-
I mean, when we looked at course, I mean, you want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. When speaking to the high school around this position, they felt they could, we didn't consolidate mid-year
Right.
because it wasn't feasible, not that we maybe could have done it if the timing were differently. And Ed and I don't agree on this, okay? And I told him he should be advocating for his department. So, absolutely. Any reduction is tough. It's hard, no doubt about it. And looking at what they have to offer and what they're doing right now is wonderful. You know, they have a section for credit recovery with three students in it. They have their biology. They have 2 sections that are helping students that need support, that have low enrollment. They have double. So I hear him and I understand it, and we have to be thinking about, you have to make a decision on the level of offerings for students that we can manage to fiscally continue. And so when that opened, knowing what was coming, we have to think that way. Now, can things happen in the next couple of months as we look at what opens? One of the commitments is trying not to reduce people who have positions right now, trying to limit as much as we can on riffing someone. So that's what played it. And Ed knows that. I mean, we talked it out. I understand completely. I do. I wish we could afford everything. I really do.
Diane?
It's very hard.
Are there any classes being offered through like Thomas College? Because I know there's a connection there.
Yeah.
Or is there something that's in
My
place?
physics class is a dual enrollment through Thomas College. And I have 11 students in there. Anatomy and physiology, I think, is dual enrollment through UMFK, thank you. And then AP Bio. And every year I offer up AP Physics and dual enrollment Physics, and usually I get dual enrollment instead of AP Physics. You know,
No.
if I'm lucky, I get a big class and I get both. But
Something we are looking at, Marco, you could speak to it. We're looking at what is being offered for seniors next year around finishing their senior year, not at Oak Hill, but in a program. Do you want to talk about that, Marco?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Do you mind if I use the?
No, you can't have, you have to fight for the.
Hold it up high, I can't reach. Yeah, so actually, Katie, this kind of journey started, Katie and I went to a conference at Southern Maine Community College, and it's called Spring Ahead. And the whole idea about this program is to get students on a college campus for the spring semester of their senior year. And so when they're on campus taking Southern Maine Community College classes, we would be counting those classes that they're taking as credits for Oak Hill High School. And so we just met maybe a week or two ago, myself and Mrs. Gagnon, in regards to a program that they're doing called Spring Ahead at Central Maine Community College. So they're offering the same thing for next year. So we put that out to our juniors so that they can be prepared for that, and our hope is that they'll take advantage of it. I mean, it's a great opportunity. As far as I'm concerned, it's a nice handoff, especially for kiddos who are not familiar with being on a college campus and taking classes. It could be a nice handoff because they still have us to help support them and keep tabs on them to make sure that they're doing well. So there's an opportunity there.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would not be in favor of cutting a science position at Oak Hill. For the simple fact is, I think, like Chris said, with the STEM program that we have building and other things that we got going on, I think cutting a position like that is a step backwards for Oak Hill. And I believe that if we can't find $101,000 someplace in this budget, that we need to really start taking another look at things, and because I mean, science is an important subject. When you talk to anybody, they want to make sure that students are learning science, math, reading, writing, so I just would not be in favor of it at this time.
Can I ask a question? Would a halftime science, halftime something else meet the need or make it more doable?
Finding 3 classes is a lot easier than finding 6 classes. So yes,
The trick is finding the person.
right.
Right.
But finding 3 classes is a lot easier than finding 6 classes.
Just wondering in terms of if there's an opportunity.
We would probably look, of course, the math department would be here tonight. You can look, I think if you're going to put it back in, then we're going to have to talk about what's coming out.
Yep.
And then we're going to have time to do that.
Yep.
Because tonight is the night.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So I would just say, if you're saying you want to try to at least keep half the classes, because there's a lot of discussion. There's discussion about some of the classes in science maybe should be under business or should be in industrial arts classes, like robotics and computer science, which are now under the science. So there's a lot of possibilities of doing things differently. It's one position from Oak Hill Middle School. It's been identified as science because there's not a person in that position. Doesn't mean there can't be continued conversation about how to best meet the science needs in a creative way. We just haven't gotten there.
Yeah.
I would like to make sure I say this. I am not asking any other department or we need an industrial arts teacher.
Oh, yeah,
I'm not
absolutely.
saying anything like that. I'm saying
Correct.
we need a science teacher. No, and that's an important point.
No,
I
you're
came in
very-
30 years ago and I was hired as a halftime math, halftime science.
Yes.
And that worked. I'm not asking for that.
Right.
Right.
Could we find a halftime science teacher and still make it work? Maybe. That's way easier finding a halftime science teacher might be harder, but, but I by no means am throwing anyone under a bus.
Loud and clear.
Bob?
Yeah, so it kind of goes to my question, is the practicality of being able to find a halftime science teacher. Science teachers are somewhat hard to find anyway, and probably someone who wants to only work half-time in science is probably 5 times harder to find. So, unless we had either someone in-house or if we had another half-time slot to add with it to make a full-time in some department where we're not asking for additional staff currently. So, the half-time, we really would have to consider a full-time, because I don't think we could fill a half-time science position unless we try to do it by a long-term sub. And even then, long-term sub-science teachers, they're science teachers and they can work full-time someplace. So just to put it out there, we're really talking about, a full boat. And, I've said it for a long time, we owe the best education that our taxpayers can afford, but that means they have to be able to afford it, because if they can't, then we lose on the other end. Their home life isn't worth it, and the education won't sink in. So, it's a tough decision, and I think it goes to some of our discussion that we had, going back to CIA, about exactly what do our graduation requirements need to look like,
Right.
and exactly how many of what type of courses do we need to offer based upon enrollment demand. We can't be all things for all students, but we can try and find alternative methods to give them that delivery, whether it's an online program for those who are college bound. They better learn, when they're seniors, they ought to be ready to go online and learn, because when they step in those college doors, they could be one of 150 in a lecture hall, or they could be taking them online. So we have to have some alternative ways to deliver education in today's educational world.
Anyone else? I didn't think you mentioned
You have someone online, Joe?
And I know that-
CEO would like to speak?
Yeah. Cheryl, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Do I need to put my camera on?
Do you want?
Let them know who they're from, where they live.
Hi.
Yes.
Where they live.
Cheryl
I
is
can't
a,
hear you now.
Cheryl is a second grade teacher in Sabatis Primary School.
Okay.
Oh, now I can hear you. I didn't hear you. Do I need to put my camera
No.
on?
No, just introduce yourself, Mrs. DCO.
Oh, okay. So I'm Cheryl Vicio. I'm a second grade teacher at the primary school. And I was kind of asked on behalf of the other teachers to come and make a short statement about the elimination of the positions at the primary level. We want you to reconsider, because our little ones really need that extra support. This district has always put the kids' needs first. We're always told, let's think, what can we do for the kids, not what's for us. And those positions were in the budget, and are there because we need that support. And it's important at this level, especially where we know that early intervention is critical to kids. And we want you to really reconsider that. I think that, at least my understanding is that they're currently unfilled, but they're not necessarily not needed. It's really hard for teachers at this level, because our kids aren't as independent, to try to run groups and do interventions when we have other kids that need support at the same time. And juggling all of this is, it's very difficult, and our kids lose out on that support. So I just wanted to come, I just found out recently that these positions were being cut. So I didn't really have a lot of time to prepare a statement, but I just wanted to come and let you know that a lot of the staff at the primary level are concerned that this elimination will severely kind of tie our hands and not allow us to do what we need to do.
Anyone have any questions or comments for Ms. DCO?
Just a question. So I see here in the summary, there's 3 elementary positions to be reduced. What are those specific positions?
Well, when we looked at, so if we go to when we did class sizes, so you had that in your cost center 1 discussion. And I'm going to go to it too, so if everybody wants to. Yeah. So it was in your first handout.
Slide 7 of the
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. Whoops, sorry. Thank you. So when we looked at it, it would probably be, I mean, everything changes and we have to look at it. But we talked about a Carrie Ricker position and a Sabatis primary position. So there are 3 because, and they are 2 are in positions, right? There are teachers in positions, and our hope would be that possible openings would allow for us to reconfigure so that there is no reduction in force, okay? And then there was 1 position that rode in the budget that was never advertised and never filled. So that was also removed.
So really
Okay.
2 existing positions.
So it's really 2 existing positions, yes. And so two current teaching positions, and then there was a position in the budget that was removed. But it's not in play this year.
Those must be different grade levels?
Yeah, we identify through the grade levels of where so when we put in enrollment class sizes for FY '24, that takes into account removing 2 teachers. So you can see where the average class size is with the 2 removal.
Is this the essentials? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. We would be removing our essentials classes, so the class sizes would be reduced everywhere else.
Right.
What's the cost savings on that?
So we've been doing, is the same with the
So
100?
any position that's open is budgeted at a certain amount, which is about $107,000. And then depending on which positions we are, saying that we're taking out here, depending on who leaves, that's a variable cost, right? Because it's based on actuals. So I don't want to.
Right.
Yeah.
That's personnel involved?
Yeah.
Can
So
we have an estimate?
cannot,
Let's go with the 107?
Yeah, I would say probably a little bit less than the 107, just because
Okay, so-
that's assuming the top, right? It's
Something we
assuming
can
the
just
top and.
Write
Yeah.
down,
Yeah.
okay.
And it's important for people to know that's not their salary.
no,
Right,
it's
that's
with benefits.
everything
That's
included,
everything.
benefits and
If it was a
everything
first-year-
employer sponsored.
Right. If it's a first-year teacher at 40,000 plus benefits, which is, a certain amount,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
probably at more 70,000,
Yeah, there's a lot of,
70,
Right,
80,000.
there's a lot
Variation
of
there.
Variation, yes. Okay.
depends on their elective coverage for health insurance, that makes a huge difference, so.
And what we're seeing on the projected, you said already has eliminated those positions. So class
Correct.
sizes will be,
Yes.
on average, for 2nd grade, 18 students, which is about what it is right now.
That's not bad.
And then 3rd and 4th grade, 16 to 17, which I think is about what it is right now.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you're just reducing that extra teacher and the essentials program, that's it.
Which on average, that class size is about
10 to 12.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mentioned, again, it's positions, and I'm a firm believer that kids learn more in a day of kindergarten than they do in a week in high school. And that goes all the way through the elementary schools because they're just absorbing everything. Their minds and their brains are developing. So you'd probably get the biggest bang for the buck if you had to, at the lower grades, maybe you can intervene on issues that they might have and help get it corrected before it gets too long. So it's, these are all tough positions and tough things to take out, and I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just trying to state my beliefs on the importance of the positions and why I feel that, they're important.
Okay, so just a big estimate, didn't use my calculator, just used my head, which could be a problem, but it's about $400,000 for these two positions plus the high school position.
No, it's about 3 1/4.
Three and a quarter,
say
okay.
3, yeah.
All right, so
Less, 320 maybe.
would we be able to find 3 1/4 in the budget? Someplace else to? Okay.
3 other teachers.
I mean,
For
That-
3
we're,
teachers?
we're
You would
very,
be adding to your local.
Yeah, that would all come out of local. Yeah,
We're asking for a 1.169 increase, might as well just throw that in there too.
Okay, anyone else? No, thank you, Mrs. Decio. Did we want
Thank you.
Marco to go ahead and have the floor now, and then we can continue our discussion? Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening. Thank you for a moment of your time. As you may or may not know, I am the president of the RSU4 Administrators Association, and the association includes the Adult Education Director position. I understand the Board of Directors is in a very difficult position given the budget constraints, and would like to advocate for the Adult Education Director position to continue to be full-time. Adult education is a long-established program that helps support our community through academic, high-set, and enrichment programs. It is also a place for students who have not found success in our traditional or alternative programs, a second chance to earn credentials to have a solid foundation to build from. Post-pandemic, the need for adult education is even greater. We have seen an increase in students accessing the program due to the effects of this event. If this program is going to meet the needs of our students and community and build further, a full-time position is necessary. Thank you, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else have anything? Is there anyone else online? All right, so we're gonna let Katie and, oh,
Somebody.
sorry, I didn't.
oh, my bad.
Good evening. I just thought it was important to let you know if the position is reduced for adult ed, what the impact would be. So just a few items to list. The involvement in state and local associations would be reduced because I would need to be in the office quite a bit more. Enrichment programming would be probably one of the first things to be reduced because we don't get subsidy on enrichment. We get course fees for it, but we don't, it would lower our subsidy. Reduction of the CASAS testing that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, that we provide that service for people entering the workforce. Reduction of connection with local colleges and community colleges. I usually visit colleges to try to get information for our students that are getting done with adult ed so we can transition them into the college career. And then finally, less support with the current day students that are potential dropouts. Right now, we have a pretty fluid process where if a student looks like they're not going to be successful during the day school, I meet with them as well, with Marco and the guidance counselor, and we've probably had at least 8 to 9 of those this year. So that would also be reduced. But that's it, unless you have questions.
Thank you. Now there's nobody else, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So Katie, cutting this position by a quarter, what's the impact of the budget? What's-
So in the presentation, I have some information, so
Okay.
we can go to that because you have it, but the public hasn't seen
Okay,
it.
all right.
So I have things that, I heard for both Christy and Robbie about certain things, so that's what has been updated in the presentation, okay? So we'll start. And you're gonna, I'm guessing, yep, okay. NJ's going to it? Okay, so one of the first questions was about adult education, and you asked for Jim to put together numbers regarding who's taking advantage of it from the towns. So he put those numbers together for you so that you could have a picture of that. I'm pushing the button. Oh, sorry. Okay. All right. Whoops. Now we're going to. Oh, no. I'm pushing. All right. I'm clicking. Okay. No. Backwards. Yeah. I'm with you. Oh. Okay. So I was asked around two things. Was asked around if it was back to full time or if it went to half time. So proposed in the budget right now is being at 0.75, which right now the local supports adult ed with $50,000. Okay, so I did the comparison around the adult ed at 0.75. The total from local needs to be $86,801. So the difference between the 50 to the 86 is $36,000. The adult ed position at full time, the difference is $61,000. And we're asking the local to do $111,000. If we went to halftime, the reason you see such a reduction is now the benefits are impacted. The benefits are not impacted in 0.75 or at full time, but it will be impacted at halftime. So that puts it at a lower amount, and it would be a reduction to the $50,000 by $10,000. Okay. And then you can see there is impact with subsidy. When we report out how much local funds went to adult ed, it factors into how much we're going to receive for state subsidy. This year we received about $23,000. So if we increased it, which there would be an increase at full-time and 0.75, we would see that subsidy go up in FY26. It's a 2-year delay. If we went down to halftime, we would see a decrease in subsidy in FY26. So that is the overall cost.
Yeah, so the current funding is 50,000, is that because we had it split?
I don't know.
I mean, we didn't just budget 50,000 in the current budget for the adult ed director?
Correct. That is correct. We are covering the cost of the adult ed program. We did not have enough funding from the local. It should have been higher, and it was not. And that's going to impact subsidy. Because we didn't bring it to where it should have been this year, we're going to be delayed in another year to see the difference.
So the warrant article that passed was just had 50,000 for the
Correct.
salary in it?
50,001, I think, but.
Yeah.
Right.
Which was 50%.
Right, because it was a
That's what
split
it was
position.
before.
So that's why it was
Right.
50. So we actually had budgeted a full time, so we took half of his salary and gave it to our facilities director.
No, you
No.
mean athletic.
Athletic. Right.
I wonder if you look back at the subsidy, though, remember that state subsidy had been put in at $102,460. So it was budgeted for full-time last year. It was just that the $102,460 that was anticipated from the state wasn't, I'm not sure how it was calculated, but that's certainly not what we received. So that state subsidy was put in there as really high to match what the budget would have been with the full-time position. So I don't think it was budgeted anticipating a half-time. I think it was budgeted anticipating full, but there was an error in how that subsidy anticipated from the state was calculated.
So the subsidy appears on the other side, on the revenue side.
Correct.
So the expense side is what the warrant article covers.
No.
Well, the warrant
yeah.
article is what we're going to spend,
In-
not necessarily what we're going
Yes.
to receive.
in the warrant article, it said 100, we looked at it today, as a
Yeah, we
matter of fact.
did,
It was
yep.
around 106,000, give or take. It said, this is the cost of adult ed, and we're asking for 50,000 with the local. It should have been higher than that. It should have been it should have been 70,000, okay? And it wasn't, for whatever reason. And I think the mindset was we were going to get a higher increase in state subsidy because the director position was going full-time.
Right.
That did not happen. One, it wouldn't have happened this time. It would have happened next time. And
That
Right.
wouldn't have mattered. I mean, if the state had given us $1 million, the warrant article is how much we're going to spend, authorized to spend, not in anticipation on the amount of revenue that we're going to get.
no, but the revenue was
So-
written down as 150,000,
But
and
that's
we
the
didn't see
revenue
that.
side. That's not what we allocated to the expense side to be. That's the two sides, right?
Yes.
So,
Okay.
part of our mission statement is educating people are lifetime learners.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have buildings that sit empty 70% of the time, the only way we can get people in them is adding enrichment classes and adult ed and getting people in to continue to learn. I think we saw it was a 300% increase in participation this year over last, and I know last year was a pandemic year, but pre-pandemic, it was higher than what we had pre-pandemic. Before I started to work for Maine Revenue Services, I used to be a volunteer tax preparer at high school for years. And so I saw a lot of enrichment classes and adult ed going on. This is one where I would support returning it to full-time because it impacts our older population. And you can see the numbers that were up there of people, adults that are paying the bills to have an opportunity to go and get enriched in some class for a fee, but it's there, and they won't be able to get it if we can't offer it, no matter what fee they're willing to pay. So this is one I was disappointed to see that it was going to be cut down. I had every intention to bring up tonight to go and add it back to .7 to a full position before the presentations, but those are my thoughts on the adult ed.
Can we continue on with their presentation, and then we'll start our discussion once they're done their presentation? Go ahead.
So another question was maintenance, safety deferred items was asked of Jonathan. So you can see he put together what is in the budget regarding safety items. One is Verkada key access, which is monitoring, making sure that we know who's out of the building, and also when we give a key and we have an employee leave, sometimes it's hard collecting keys, right? So the Verkada allows us to immediately shut it down so that that person no longer has access. Jonathan can speak to this, but there's a COPS grant that he's applied to help offset the total costs. So if we receive the grant, we have to contribute 25% of the total. And so this could be a savings, but it has to remain in there. We won't know the outcome of the grant until October. So some of the deferred maintenance may be able to be, depending on if we get the grant. The deferred items that we consider safety items are window treatments. So those are the windows that are having trouble opening. And so if people need to exit out windows, that would be a safety concern. If you walk around the SBS, they have cracks in their sidewalk and driveway, which can be a trip hazard. Same with Carrie Ricker, also has major cracks. And then locking doorknobs, noticing doors, especially when you do a lockdown drills, what doors. Central office, I hate to even tell the public, but we're lacking in door locks. And then capital improvement plan, some of the big safety items there are the entry exit door replacements at Carrie Ricker. And then also at central office, right now people can walk in freely with no checking in. And so looking at a redesign to help support more security at central office.
And if I may, Katie, I believe some of the window treatments too, it's not just repairing the windows, but it's reducing the visibility outside in. for the middle school and the high school, I believe, is what those top two are. So some is repair, but others are, perfectly functional windows, but reducing visibility in.
Didn't Oak Hill Middle School just get new windows?
Yeah.
Yeah, prior to me being in the position, but in the past, 4 years, I got some new windows. Yeah.
So these are things so we can see out, but people can't see in.
Right.
Yeah. Scott?
What's the biggest driver in the cost difference between central office and the schools? Because it's a pretty significant jump. I mean, I kind of envision just one access point to every building anyway, so.
Are you talking about the
Is that expensive, or?
the CIP, the building?
I'm talking
Oh.
about the access
Oh,
system.
yeah.
$20,000 per building, but yet central office is only 6.
Yeah,
What-
so.
Oh.
sorry.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
Part of that,
Come up, John.
yeah, sorry. Microphone.
I'll just stand right here. Yeah, so part of that is we already have a camera pointing in the direction of the entry of the door here, so we don't have a camera, the licensing and the install fee to account. The key card access also for the schools is accounting for a minimum of 4 doors. That's the amount that one control unit or brain can control. They can do up to 4 doors. We don't need 4 doors here. We only need one card reader for the one main entrance, maybe for another one back here, but at the most it'd be 2. So we already, for the central office, we already have some parts and pieces already here, and we don't need as many access controls to this building like we do at the schools. So
Just walk down all the doors and just have one access point at the schools?
on the key card entry,
Yes.
we could. Do you mean just maybe the front entrance having a key card entry?
Correct.
And the rest?
The other doors remain locked.
Yep. The thought process was, well, yeah, and having staff have the card entry to get in and out of the building, and then a master key only be for myself, head custodian, principal, superintendent. So we'd have a control over who has physical keys. That's sort of a concern that I have right now, which is a big driver for this. If we only do one door, or like say the main door, that could cause bottleneck with staff trying to come in and out if they only have that entry to that one door.
And recess being on the other side, so teachers can come in and out at different.
Similarly, like say at the high school, if we put 2 in the back for where teachers primarily park and come in.
Have you shopped other brand of key access?
I haven't, no. It's just something that is already tied into the camera system we currently have, so it fluidly ties into what we have currently in place. But I'm really excited about the SVPP grant. Again, that's, it's not set in stone. Of course, we have to wait and see if we get it, but they pay up to 75% of up to $500,000 projects. So a huge contributor if we can get that.
So the next is just a summary of what we've gone over, just to remind you. So we've talked about the positions that are in there that have been removed. We've talked, we also removed some of the ed tech positions that are unfilled positions, a kitchen worker position, and then the adult ed portion of that position. We talked about an increase in out-of-district tuition for 19 students being placed at 100% attendance. I wanted to give you an update on that because I think I shared at our meeting how I had spoken. There were several superintendents that called, and the next day we did get notification that that emergency had been withdrawn. So of course people were like, oh, okay, this is exciting news, and then it was not, it was short-lived. So we were then told that although it was withdrawn for now, so as somebody put it, the train got slowed down, but it hasn't come back to the station. All right. So we anticipate, this was supposed to go in place in 2 weeks, and districts would have been devastated. So at this point, we don't know. They're looking at how to recalculate the daily rates. It may be less expensive. So we don't know yet. So we have put in at 100% at the daily rates we know. This could change. But to risk taking money out, not knowing what that change is, we don't feel that's fiscally responsible. We're budgeting 100%, and we're budgeting 19. That could go to 21. You know, it also could go the other way. But, you know, so we've been riding around 19, 18, 20. So that is a volatile line. Then remind you of the technology department reorganization that we're looking at shifting to have a network specialist position. We're looking for the technician reduction there, which would be a reduction in force. There is a person in the position that's being paid out of the grant, so that would be a shift from three positions, one being in the ARP ESSER funds. So we have 5 technicians right now, and we're looking for one to be reorganized as a network specialist, one to be reduced, and then one to stay in the grant. So that's the changes there. Then transportation, looking at a reduction of one of the 3 unfilled bus driver positions. So that still leaves 2 unfilled bus driver positions to create a half-time administrative assistant position. And then we have the maintenance, just to remind folks that that maintenance position line has come down significantly since the beginning, when it was first presented to myself. And then 5 positions remain in the ARP ESSER funds, which is the SPS nurse, the assistant principal, the dean of students at the middle school, a technology technician, and interventionist. So, you know, we're looking for the year after, out of those positions, probably absolutely strongly advocating for the assistant principal position at the middle school. And there is a correction here, which I didn't correct before. It's not an intervention position in the ARP, it's a study hall monitor at the high school. And I didn't correct that. So you see, and I did hand you out, and it's also in here, we talked to Greg Im, who's our attorney, who does our warrants and getting things ready, and we spoke to him yesterday, because this is Sam, our first go-through with an RSU. So in talking to him about getting our warrant papers done, he'll be ready tomorrow when you get to where you know the numbers that you want, because you have to next week vote and sign the warrants. He's also talked to us a lot about nutrition. So here's a change here, because the DOE is recommending that nutrition not be in the general fund, because the fund is not a general fund. Okay, it has a different code to it. We had put it here because we take the local and count it as an expenditure. Doesn't need to be that way. There will be a warrant, just like the adult ed warrant. The difference will be that it won't have the total budget. The adult ed has to have the total budget plus the amount. The nutrition, it will just be to collect and expend $150,000. So in the general fund, this is what the general fund is. And then this is the revenue against it. Okay, so what's paying for the general fund? These revenue lines, which is your local allocations, your additional local funds, then your miscellaneous revenue, the state allocation. And I do want, I've been asked this a couple of times, the newspaper did not do a real service to school departments by saying the state gave more money. So I've been getting emails, oh, so we got it $279,000 more, can't you put the positions back in? We didn't get more money. We got state funds to lower the local contribution, yes, and that's a positive, but we didn't receive more funding. So you'll see the state allocation, the state agency funds, the CDS revenue we receive, main care reimbursement that we collect, our balance forward of $400,000, and then laptop report and technology revenue that we anticipate. So you can see this supports this. So then moving forward, the adult education budget is this. Okay. And then there's the revenue to pay for the adult education program. So you can see the local contribution, which is totaling our new amount, and then state subsidy, and then the general course fees. So you'll see a reduction there of that state subsidy that was anticipated. Okay. Then you'll see school nutrition. Here's the total budget for school nutrition, which, you know, Kathy worked really hard with her team to bring that number down. And then you'll see the school nutrition revenue. So the local contributions, there's the local allocations for each town, the state subsidy, and then the school lunch daily sales.
So that's where that $150,000 of revenue lives now in this model.
So you can see the account is 2930. So the state, what the attorney explained to us is the state wants to pull, so that when they pull numbers, they want to make sure it's as accurate as possible what people are collecting and expending. So they would like to keep it in the 2930 category, not put some of it in the general fund.
So we tied to this warrant article about not being able to go over?
Not going over what?
Well, taxpayers authorized us to spend a certain amount of dollars, right?
Correct. So you'll have a warrant to collect and expend the 150. They don't have, it's not required that they approve the total budget of the nutrition. Unlike the adult ed has to have the budget in there. It's just
They're only required.
all the statutes.
They're only required to approve the number that we're asking for.
Correct.
To
Yeah.
make the budget.
Correct.
To spend.
Yeah.
And I think what's nice about this model, just looking at both ways, is that, you know, each of those funds, you can see the balance of the budget to the revenue. It's a little bit clearer, I think. So it's just, for purposes of comparison, I think it's nice to see them stacked, you know, side by side against the budget versus the revenue.
Yeah, because used to it was just one line. It was
Right,
just
exactly.
Nutrition program or
Yeah.
school lunch,
Yep.
150,000.
Yeah.
And we just kept waiting to get, to transfer the money to get transferred into the
Correct.
account.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we weren't alone. I mean, he said he'd been working with districts to move in
Yeah.
this direction.
Yeah.
And then the last slide, you've seen before, so
Well, with
you took some
Yeah.
feedback on that.
So, Bob, I think you had said it'd be nice to see, you know, how the state contribution breaks out town by town. So this slide has changed only in the fact that the state contribution for each of the 3 towns is listed first. It's italicized. I just wanted to make sure it was clear that's not being calculated in that bold local total. But to see, what you're getting for your required local share for state contribution by town, that's included there. And again, these numbers haven't changed. We've just moved where that 150,000 lived, that's all. So, it's split out on each of these tables, and it will be split out on the warrants like we've talked about as well, so.
And if you would fill the other two with the state contribution, fiscal year '23, and the difference. So
Okay.
the
Yeah, that's right.
taxpayer can go and
I
see
knew
how
that.
much we got in state contribution last year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it will show the difference,
I was gonna do that.
either
Okay.
plus or minus. I mean, it kind of goes along,
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
how it's always been kind of presented in the warrants before,
Yep.
so it makes it
Yeah,
clear,
in the budget book, it definitely will be.
yeah.
Yeah, because all of those tables have the preceding year, so, yep. But I can update it in this slide before it's published tomorrow, that's okay.
All right, so now we're gonna move into our discussion portion of this evening. And I wanna make sure that I really, really let you guys know, we can't leave if we don't agree. So we are in it until we can get everybody to accept what we are going to put out to voters. So,
Well, you hope we agree.
well, yes, I hope we
There
have
could always
some
be a motion next
mutual
week.
agreement
You know,
to go that way.
it may or may not pass. Just
I'd like to try to get all of this before that. Okay? So I'd kind of like to have a roundtable of where everybody is sitting right now. Like, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are, where you are. Are we, yes, we're okay with this? No, I want some change, or, well, I'm okay, but. Is that clear?
So I can I have so a question just on a couple of the things that were in the presentation, just so I'm clear. So on the general fund revenue, miscellaneous revenue, 129,000. Are we anywhere close to that this year?
Yes.
That's a big number to be
Yeah.
miscellaneous.
Yeah, we are
I mean,
currently, sorry.
It's bigger than all but two other lines on there under revenue that's identified.
Yeah, we're currently on target to exceed that
And
this
what
year.
makes up the,
Activity fees from different student events. There is some funds that have been received this year for certain technology that we anticipate a little bit of that as well next year. That made up a bigger chunk than has in the past. But yeah, we're on track to hit our mark for that.
okay, then I guess I'm still hung up a little bit. I look at the adult ed budget, adopted fiscal year 23 was 152,000. A little while ago, you said we only had like 107,000.
That was what was in the warrant. I'm just saying what was in the warrant. The total amount was not in the warrant.
I guess I am confused. When we budget something, that's what's in the warrant.
I can't explain last year, Bob.
Well, but if we adopted 152,000 adult ed, that's what had to be in the warrant, otherwise we didn't adopt it. Right? And if it was in the warrant, then there's more funding than what you were saying. And so we look at the difference now is 33,000, which is the savings to go to 0.75. I'm just, the explanation of why it wasn't funded, it just goes against everything that in my few years of being on the board, going through budgets, just maxed. I mean, we had an issue with the warrant. We had to go back for a special thing, but it wasn't adult ed. It was just copy and number off of the wrong cell into someplace.
Right.
So, I mean, I probably still have a copy of the warrant at the house. I didn't dig it out from last year. I usually have them back for several years.
We can get the book.
But,
We have the budget booklet if you'd like to look at it.
well, I just am confused. In the one hand, we're saying we under budgeted it, but here this shows we had 152,000, and your enrichment courses pay for themselves, but we do have to go and allow to spend it.
Not all enrichment courses give revenue, correct?
All enrichment courses do get revenue, and they either have to be they have to be self-sustaining. We don't lose any money on enrichment courses.
So driver's ed, we get a percentage of driver's ed?
We actually make money off of
Yeah.
it because we don't pay the instructor, but we get user fees for them using our space. So that's a plus.
So,
So it's $15 on student.
So, but I think where the confusion is, and I'm with you on, is if you look under FY '23 adopted, right?
Right.
Okay, so the total expenditure was 152,461. That was the expenditure. The 102,460 state subsidy was not accurate.
That's the revenue side.
Nope, but
That's
that's
the
what.
revenue side.
Well, that's
That's
what we're
not in
trying-
what we approved to spend. We approve to expend expenditures. We hope to get revenue, right? So a warrant article is to allow to raise and expend X number of dollars, all right? or to expend in some place. The raise and expend comes later, but the initial warrant article is to allow us to expend X number of dollars in any particular area. So I guess I'm confused on that, and that's fine. I just
And
hope that we can support taking it back to 100%.
But I think it's worth it to be said, you're not the only one confused by it. I'm wondering if it was not drafted correctly. And that's why there's confusion, because that number is in the warrant.
And you're right, it is,
In the warrant, that's what
it is concerning that what you're saying means that $50,000 cannot be spent this year in adult ed, and then we have to have a bigger conversation another time.
I think Christine was. I do have a couple of questions in terms of positions that are not filled. Where do those funds go? So we've had a couple of opening positions that we're cutting. So where's the cost savings? Does that go into a different line item?
Yeah, I mean, there are sometimes unanticipated expenditures. We've had several this year that we didn't anticipate. And so what we're saving by having positions that were budgeted for that haven't been filled sometimes goes to cover those unanticipated expenses. You know,
But in next year's budget, which I think is where you're really pointing at, where did the money go from the savings by cutting? That's going into salary increases, increased fuel costs, increased electricity,
Yes.
and all of that stuff.
I am stuck on the nutrition thing a little bit. So on page 18 of the breakdown, it has sort of the date when it's in, and it's 18,000. And on the line item, it has supplies, food and non-food at 320 and 29,000. Are those supposed to be closed, or are they?
Hit me with it again.
Yeah, on the 18, the total nutrition cost breakdown is 187 for food and 18,000 for non-food. I assume that's like to date level.
Yes,
Yes,
exactly.
yeah, it says total to date.
Budgeting for 320 and almost 30,000.
So remember some interesting things about those numbers. So remember that in February, the high school was not open for a couple of weeks. So there's 2 weeks of feeding 4 grade levels of students, right? And with the damage, some food had to be thrown away and reordered and things of that nature. So those numbers are a little strange, and we can't say like they're compared to normal or what we would anticipate. And it is only through February, so if you kind of project that out for what we anticipate, that's where we're coming up with those numbers in the budget.
Okay. And then do we know, before it was completely taxpayer funded, do we know the number of students that were at free or reduced lunch?
Our percentage prior to our percentage.
How much- do
Yeah.
you know what percentage that is?
Not off the top of my head, but I'm happy to research that.
Kathy,
Find it.
I do. So
Kathy has
pre-COVID, so even when I came on in 2014 to 2018, we were in the high 40s to low 50s. And since COVID, and we just ran our numbers because we had to run our numbers on April 3rd, we are all below 40%. That does affect different programming. So in order to be school-wide for ESSA and our Title I, we have to be over 40%, or we'll have to go back to targeted. And then we tried to apply for a special provision 2 this year to see if we could get our percentages up, and then that would lock us in for the next 3 years. Because we didn't hit that 40%, we won't lock in. We'll try to roll over and do another base year next year. So we tried a couple of things this year. We tried to do the regular FRAM piece in those forms, and if you were a parent, you probably saw it 3 or 4 times. And then we also did the short form, which is the economic disadvantage, which helps the ED 279, but it cannot be done and used for my nutrition. So we tried to cast the net as wide as we could to get as many of our families to complete that. I know there was a question last time of how many unpaid balances we had in Infinite Campus, and we did do that. And we had about $7,000 worth of lunch that was not paid for.
From
21, 22, there was the leftover balance from leftover since COVID, from pre-COVID.
Does that get rolled over, or because it's absorbed within the budget already, it's kind of?
It's not absorbed in the budget because it's paid lunches that were not, that we expended, but we didn't get in. So we did roll those balances into the students' accounts. Just like if they had a positive balance, we rolled that in. No different if they had a negative balance, we rolled that in.
Same with staff.
And then with the ARP, ESS, ER fund, what's left in that account?
I don't think we're going to be able to have that right on. Yeah,
I'm not
no. What do you, I can't give the exact number. It is on the website in the DOE. I could pull that up.
So on the website, under the school board budget, you'll actually see where we spent the CARES, the ESSER 2, as well as the ESSER 3 and our different projects. So we went through that process of surveying our community, and then you can see where we are spending it. And then there's also a link that you can put a public comment, and anyone can put comments at any point.
So I just was, there's 5 positions being paid for with some of that money, right? And so as we look at like just our student population, 40 to 50% of kids, families are at that level where they really can't even afford a $2.60 lunch, right? And now we're going to increase that. We're gonna ask for like 40 more bucks a month from them on top. You know what I mean? Like, it's really hard for me to like go there when half of our kids, like half of these, hard. So if we have additional money kind of sitting in these funds that we could use for something.
So we can share with you, right now we have 1.6 million in our balance for that. But a lot of this has been allocated. So those positions, yes, that's one. Summer school, that's another. We don't have summer school in the general fund. That is it paid out of here. And it's paid for a lot of things. There's tutoring that we offer after school. So are you asking, can you put a project together to pay for food service? We'd have to have an argument about that.
Yeah, so 1.7 million we did last year, right? 1.7 was the raise from last year to this year. Now we're asking taxpayers again this year for 1.1 additional local money. And I think if there's other places that we have money sitting and waiting, like allocated, I understand, but.
You have to, the project has to show that the reason you need the project is because of COVID. It's not because taxes. So I'm not sure that would be a project or not be a project. And I hear what you're saying. There is an increase this year with the school nutrition of 150,000 because it was not collected last year. So it looks like a big jump there. Yes.
And I just think that, I think if families can afford to pay it, I think they should.
We can't ask them to, because it's a law that they get paid. It's paid.
But they could make a donation.
Yeah. Right.
How about the teachers? Let's keep rushing. I know that I'm not the only one that wants to have this discussion, so I know, Chrissy, you had some thoughts.
I had lots of questions. We can start with the teacher positions. You just want me to say how I'm feeling, where I'm at? Okay.
Yep.
So after looking at class sizes and hearing how the cut in the science position would impact high school students, I would propose putting back the high school science position, but continuing to eliminate the elementary school positions. The reason why, in looking at our enrollment numbers, if we add one more class size to either 1 and 2 or 3 or 4, our class sizes will shrink to 13. And although having a smaller class size is awesome, the research shows kind of the sweet spot being between 15 to 22. So I think class sizes of 16, 17 at first and second grade is feasible. So that's kind of where I'm laying with that piece.
Anyone else on the teacher situation?
Yeah, I would be in favor of putting the science teacher back in the budget and also bringing the adult ed director back to 100%. For the simple fact is that cutting those enrichment programs is going to impact a lot of our community members that actually enjoy those enrichment programs. And did we cut his secretary too?
Yes.
From adult ed?
Yes.
Okay, so now we're asking him to not only lose the secretary, but work 3/4 of the time. So I would be in favor of putting that back to 100%. And as far as, I agree with Chrissy about the elementary positions, I think with the class sizes where we are and the realignment that we have, I think we could get by with those. And I'm having some issues with the deferred maintenance budget, but I'm willing to wait until we get the study, the evaluation back of our buildings, and then see where we are. Because what I heard from the building vote was that if we're gonna keep these buildings, we have to pay to keep them. So if that means the budget goes up, the budget's gonna go up in order to keep these buildings. And I just hope we don't lose an electrical panel at Libby Tozier, or a roof issue in Sabatis, or somebody trips and falls in the parking lot, because those are all things that are gonna end up costing us that are not in the budget. So that's my thoughts.
Jill, I thought we were just talking about teachers.
It's okay, you can go.
So I have a couple of other things. I had asked Jonathan to give us numbers of any deferred costs that impact student safety, which now you'll see in the slide 4 that Katie presented to us. I'd like to see that $30,000 go back into the budget to, especially the locking doorknob piece, the window treatments, the fact that some of our windows you can look in from the outside and see what's going on in classrooms. God forbid something happens in our communities. These are $30,000 feels like in the grand scheme of things very small. So I would like to see that put back. In terms of adult ed, if you know me, you know I am a huge, huge, huge proponent of adult education. I think it's a critical piece of kind of the school community. However, I did ask some tough questions. I wanted to know, is it feasible to outsource HiSET and GED program to another district to collaborate? For enrichment, could we have a coordinator position instead of a full-time staff person, and what that would look like cost-wise? So I think we saw what the 50% piece would look like. I have a really hard time. These numbers are great, don't get me wrong, and like I said, I am a huge proponent of adult ed. I just, in looking at the budget, I would recommend that we cut that position so it can go into student serving positions right now, just because of the way the budget is.
Diane, your thoughts?
I would agree with the cutting the positions at the elementary level. They're a low class sizes. Having been in the classroom, those are really good numbers to work with. However, I do have a concern with those kids who are really falling in the cracks. Especially in that 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Those are the kids that are most impacted by COVID, and they didn't have in-school class time. So those are the ones that I really have a concern with. I would also approve putting that science teacher back at the high school. I think it's important that we do that. Unless we could find or be positive of having colleges give us, give the kids some class time, that would take into that. That's my, so far.
Anything else outside of just the teachers?
Yeah.
Jill?
Oh. That's okay, go ahead.
Are you done? And Troy? Okay.
Hey, just my point on the college pieces, colleges picking up science classes for our students. That does not include transportation, right? So if that doesn't include transportation, right, it doesn't include transportation.
Are you talking about the Spring Ahead
Yeah.
program? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
They wouldn't be on, they wouldn't be on our campus,
Right.
Robbie, so there's no obligation on our part to provide transportation
Right.
for them to get to campus. I mean, it's not something that we've necessarily talked about either.
Well, I'm just thinking that's gonna be a hardship for students, even though they may, love to take a college class and get college credit at the college. Transportation is a problem to Southern Maine Community College when you can't get there. So I get the idea that it's a good idea.
Sure.
But I think it kind of hinders, economically challenged students, for one, and not everybody would be able to participate because we can't get them there.
They take all their classes there. They wouldn't take just one class.
No, but still,
Yeah.
they still have to get there.
Right.
And we did talk to the college about that. We talked to them about, it would be great if you had a bus stop in Lewis, at the Lewiston ramp, or put it in a location that maybe our parents can get them there and then have a bus. We talked about the economic, we talked about the challenges of transportation. How could if they want that to happen, then they need to help support. So we did
I'm just
mention.
saying, I had
Yeah,
two sons that went to Southern Maine Community College.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they found their own way there.
Yeah, but we did talk to them about that.
Are there some of those classes that are virtual?
I don't know if they've talked about virtual or not. But some class, I know that LA College, they're open to having students join those classes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, the positive right now is the community colleges are paying for the classes.
Right.
Diane, were you done?
I would say adult ed, I would agree to do it a .75 position in the other part.
Vicki?
I'm going to agree with Diane and with, Kirsty. I believe that the elementary positions can be cut, that those numbers are great. Anyone would be thrilled to have numbers like that, I think. And go with the .75 for the adult ed and put in the science position.
I just noticed another name.
Brandon?
Brandon.
I don't know what you're looking for from me. I'm not, this is a lot to take in.
And we understand
3
that.
sit-downs, so I mean.
I was in your position last year.
Okay.
And look where she is.
So, yeah, I'm not really sure. I
Do you
mean,
have
it
any
seems like a
questions?
lot of work has gone into it, so I don't really know what a good question looks like. I mean, I've gone through the paperwork a few times, but it's a lot.
Okay. Scott?
I'm not in favor of cutting any teacher positions, adult ed positions at all. I think that's really the core of education. We're seeing all the cuts there, but really nothing anyplace else, especially in administration. We had a significant jump last year in the cost of the taxpayer, and another one this year, which I just don't think our communities can afford right now. I really think I want to just see a lot more cuts someplace other than staff, teaching staff specifically.
Laura?
I think I kind of, oh my God, geez, now I'm not sure. So I think I kind of spoke earlier about it's a lot, 1.1 is a lot to ask for, especially with our population and where people are at. I would hate to see any direct student impact positions cut anywhere. And I think it's always interesting to kind of hear like, oh, maybe we could find 20,000 here or 10,000 there or 50,000 here. So, you know, I think I'm not a proponent of nitpicking through a budget, but I would suggest a 0% increase and let you figure it out.
Yeah, so in a way, I agree with Scott. Cutting teachers' positions is kind of go against the core of what we do. However, if we don't need them, as it appears to be the case at the elementary levels, then they're appropriate to reduce. I much more support returning the adult ed to 100% than I do adding a science teacher back in, because for years and years, I have often wondered and thought that we sometimes offer too many options to end up with small classes to go and provide a service for a minority of the students at the loss of many others. So, you know, we offer a lot of advanced classes, not only in science. We heard a bunch of them that are out there that we're offering, that at the highest level colleges need them. And I'm not sure how many of our students apply and go to the highest levels colleges, and just exactly what those are compared to the University of Maine system or some of the others. So I believe that sometimes we start building programs and we get them going and we keep building them and keep expanding. And once we expand, that takes more staff. Instead of going back to where we were when we were still providing quality education that meets the goals a few years ago, we have slowly added a class here and there. Some of that came on when teachers started teaching 6 classes instead of 5, which was a great benefit to us. But, you know, so, you know, my thought is, you know, another 106,000, which it probably wouldn't come in at that, but you'd have to budget that. You're looking for a science teacher, you're probably not getting 1 or 2 of your teacher in science to come in. But is a big addition to the budget. The 0% budget to cut $1 million out, probably 75% of our costs are personnel. So you don't want to lose 2 elementaries and a science teacher. You can start looking at losing 25 teachers across, because at 100,000 each, $1 million is, you know, it's going to take a bunch of teachers, because we can't cut the fuel, we can't cut the electricity. We have negotiated salaries and contracts, so that all have to be honored. So a 0% increase is unfortunately not feasible. This is a big ask. But so that, you know, I more support the addition back of the full-time adult ed than the science teacher. And that's, I'd like to see the, you know, maintenance, because we cut maintenance and cut maintenance and cut maintenance for years and years and years, and it all builds up. And it comes, and sooner or later it comes to roost, and we hope we can budget for it ahead of time, but usually it catches us, like the boiler.
One small reminder with the adult ed, that is really the only position that we can generate revenue with. I'd like to see, you know, maybe that increase, and get more revenue built up through that program and offset some of these costs. The other two positions we're looking to cut don't generate revenue.
No, I already, yeah.
So as
That leaves you.
for myself, I'm with Chrissy on the elementary. I understand where the 2 elementary positions are coming from. I was a little skeptical at first, but as I looked at it and I saw the numbers, I was like, oh yeah, I can see where that, I understand. I'd like to see keeping the science teacher stay into the budget, only because I think our future's leading more in that direction. I do understand that. I'm with Bob and Robbie. There are maintenance. We've been pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off, and now we're at a point. I mean, last year we were at a boiling point where we were trying to get a new building put, and that didn't go through. But everybody wants us to fix these old buildings. Well, you've got to have the money to fix those old buildings, but you're not willing to increase the budget in those areas. You're wanting to take from that area to put it someplace else. So for me, the safety is student-centered. Even though it includes central office, it still is student-centered. So I'd like to see that added into that. I know it's a big ask for the community. We all are part of the community here. But the community is also giving us that feedback of, we want our buildings to be fixed. Well, in order to fix your buildings, this is what needs to happen. We want to keep our teachers. Well, in order for us to keep all of our teachers, this is also what has to happen. So it's kind of on that double edge where you want to protect your taxpayer, you want to keep the taxes down, but it's inevitable that everything goes up in life no matter what. And you can't predict some of those costs. As far as adult ed, I'm still a little conflicted with the adult ed program. I'd almost like to see it eliminated altogether and sourced out to another district or area or town. I don't think that we've seen the revenue that you want to see or you think will help the budget at all. I know it was COVID, I understand that, but I just don't see the interest level as much as everybody else does. They have a class, nobody signs up for it. Well, there was some wasted time and energy putting that class together with no revenue coming in to help. So for me, I'd like to eliminate the adult ed altogether and have it sourced out to Lewiston or whoever else could go. Those are my thoughts. So I guess now we really need to come into a more, sorry, I didn't see.
Could I just have a clarifying question? Kids that were, I mean, you have the averages in the class. Are special ed and FLS kids included in these totals in the classrooms?
Yes.
Yeah,
So it's potential that
it's even
some of
smaller.
these kids could be, classes could be smaller depending on kids who receive services like in special ed or FLS. So just so you are aware of that as well.
So I guess we'll go with, since we seem to have a few really centered items that we are talking about. All those who would be in favor of eliminating the elementary school, would you let me know by your raise of hand?
The two
The
elementary.
two
schools.
elementary students.
Yeah, they don't count.
Okay. So then, all those who would want to keep the science teacher at the high school, please
So
let me
to
know by your.
reinstate the high school.
Yes, to reinstate, yeah, to keep it there. And the adult ed position, all those who want the full-time to stay, let me see. All those who want it to go to the proposed 0.75. Christy, I can't remember what else you had out
I had 50% or to outsource.
there. So I'm an outsource.
I'm outsourced.
Okay. So where does that leave us?
Wait a minute, there's discussion on the outsourcing. So we offer adult ed for our students to get their high school diploma. These are our students, and we're gonna send them to someplace else when we have and have had, since this high school was built, provided courses for our students to be able to get their high school diploma from Oak Hill.
Not only that, community members.
Yeah, people who dropped out for one reason or another and then came back and decided they wanted to get a high school diploma. They came back to our school system where they had been going to school, and we think that we can, if you don't want to have enrichment classes and let your residents that pay the taxes for these buildings have to go and spend money to take taxes in some other school system where they might have to pay a non-resident fee. It just boggles me that the services that we provide through adult ed be willing to outsource to somebody that doesn't have the connection and can't work with them while they're still getting ready to drop out, and before they do, working with the principal and the guidance counselor to try and salvage them ahead of time. It's just unfathomable to me that we would do that.
So enrichment classes, like looking at some of this workforce training and stuff, like the first aid, CPR, and defensive driving and computer things, different organizations, I think with COVID, a lot of people created like small business type of things or their own type of things, and you can do all of it online, you can do these different things. So there's nothing to say that, like first aid, CPR, who does that, like American Red Cross. American Red Cross could submit an application to reserve a room at the building or something, right, like a facility request. And still offer that to they can do it at the town office, the Wales town office, or wherever, and still offer that to the community. So just because taxpayers aren't funding a position to organize that, these different organizations, especially the nonprofits, still have opportunity to do that on their own and offer it.
And you could use revenue to fund a stipend to coordinate that enrichment. And to your point around the GED pieces, it doesn't have to be an adult ed director that teaches those.
No, I think you're right. We're going from one extreme to another extreme. So I would not recommend going totally outsourced, because you're going, the high school students, as your point, community members come in, that's where they look to get their academics and yes, could they go to Lewiston to do their classes and stuff? Yes, they could. Could they go to Gardner? Yes, they could. But you're going from one, where the community see adult ed as a key component to the school department. So to go from, we were looking at 0.75 as a way to recognize that it was expensive, but yet we're going to bring it down so it's not full-time. And I think there still would be enrichment at 0.75. I believe this, things will still be happening. And if the revenue does come in, then next year when we look at the revenue, we could say, boy, enough revenue came in that we could bring it up to full-time. Do you see what I'm saying? Or you're at halftime and you've earned, so that's the challenge, is to go from one stream to the other stream. That's why we tried to bring it in as fiscally as responsible as we could. Therefore, I would not recommend just totally dissolving it.
Jim?
Yeah, so I've been doing this for 24
Mhm.
years, and you can say that our students, our diploma students and high-set students will go to another district. We have a hard enough time getting them to come to Oak Hill. They're not going to go to another district.
So then the 0.75, I'm a full-time, I'm just not seeing the full-time for an adult ed director within our budget.
I would even say go back to halftime. That's what we've always had prior to this year. I know it will impact the subsidy, but it seems like our subsidy has already been impacted with the error.
That's not true. We had a full-time adult ed director and a full-time athletic director, two different people for a long time. And then when we lost our athletic director, we combined the two positions for a while. So it's only been in recent years that they did adult ed and athletic director duties.
11
years.
Just curious, if we were to go 0.75 with the adult ed, could we enhance maybe our volunteer position, like a volunteer coordinator position with that, as we're making some cuts other places. Like, I know a few meetings ago, Kathy had mentioned, like, maybe these people sitting in their cars waiting for their kids at the pickup line to come read the kids. But as we limit some of those teaching positions, could that be an opportunity to have a .75 or maybe even a full and add in a volunteer coordinator kind of thing to that? Because a bunch of people that might be able to volunteer do enrichment things on the side, I think, that could maybe help those programs then by building that relationship with some of those community members, and then it would be.
Well,
Jill?
yeah,
Are you asking for a paid volunteer position?
I'm asking for like .5 adult ed, .25 of a volunteer coordinator throughout the district. So,
Throughout the district?
So I would kind of see, I don't know, do we have one now? Do we have a volunteer?
No.
So we would see that
Those
as
were the
like-
first things cut.
We would
years
see
ago.
that as like opportunity to say, we need 20 people at the elementary school reading to kids, 20 people at Carrie Ricker or Libby Tozier or whatever, and then those people that would volunteer for that typically also crochet or sew or do something else on the side, and then they could kind of maybe help build that program collaboratively with everything involved in it, and then it wouldn't.
Possibly, can I speak? If you go to .5, you lose any kind of connection with our hub, which is how we get grant money, because I would not be able to attend meetings at a hub meeting or state level meetings, so the director's meetings, so, and volunteer coordinators are great, but they have to be certified, they have to go through all the testing, you have to be a high-set tester administrator to be able to offer that, and you gotta go through the whole process, so, you asked that question, Christie, you do have to be a director for the most part to run the high-set test.
So let's maybe revisit about those who weren't in favor of the .75 or the elimination. Where are you now? So like Christy.
Yeah, I mean, I hear your point, Jim. I also really think if there could, and maybe it's benchmarks built into the adult, like it's not a volunteer coordinator, it's community outreach, which is part of our adult ed position. So if we as a board would like to see that, is that something that we could say, like, we would really like to see more community involvement? Because you're right, there are tons of people that are waiting in those lines that have a bunch of skill sets that people, I mean, I deal with volunteers every day at work. People are not volunteering in the traditional ways that we have seen because they haven't been asked in a way that is episodic. Like, people can commit to, yes, I can give you 3 hours every Tuesday for 3 weeks, and that's all I can do. But if there was somebody focused on that, I think we would see more community engagement, which is something that we have in our community. People show up, but it also is on a decline. And if we have that community engagement, then people are going to be much more, yes, I'm going to vote to make your budget go up more because something is in it for me. So I really like that. And if I could see deliverables around that, it would help me to be able to say to people that say, why is the taxes going up? And why are we funding this? Well, this is why. So I like that a lot, Laura.
So at this point, though, like, that's, so you're
So,
trying,
well,
you're
are
asking
you
them to go back
saying-
and revisit all of that positioning. So right now, what they're asking for us is to put into the budget that .75 adult ed director. Then maybe once we get over that, we can start thinking about
For next year.
that other piece of it. Because at this point now, you're talking they've got to go all the way back and try to find out where to put that in.
I would think that would be embedded into the position. So it's not saying 50% is going to be adult ed and 25 is going to be community outreach. Community outreach is part of adult ed. So just as a board saying, like, we're going to fund 75 at the 75% level, and these are kind of the deliverables that we would like to see. So when this comes up next year, we can have some benchmarks to know whether or not our program is kind of meeting the needs that we're hearing in the community.
Katie, on the volunteer part, do we just allow people to come into the school and read library time? Or do they have to have a background check? And they have to have all that, right?
Yes.
In order, so it's not just as easy as
Correct.
walking up to the office window and say, I want to come in for story time and read.
Right.
That's just not the way it happens anymore. So the idea of volunteering is great, I get it, but to get people to go through that background check,
It's hard.
it's hard.
It's
I
hard.
know, I've been through it, not that I have any issues. But what I'm saying is, it is a hindrance to some people,
It's costly.
and it's costly to volunteer now.
Yeah.
So we have trouble getting,
It costs them nothing.
It costs them nothing.
right, it costs them nothing,
Time.
but except for filling out the application and
Yeah.
the background
That's the
check
hard
and all
part,
that.
to get them to do that.
Yeah, so consequently, saying we want volunteers is great, but the problem with volunteering is the same problem that we get with subs, not being able to get subs.
Yep.
The same problem that we get with not being able to get bus drivers. It's the same problem with not being able to get enough custodians. And it's the same problem with not, you know, so it's not just as easy to say, oh, we're just gonna start taking volunteers in. You have to have the volunteers to take in before you, I mean, that's the issue.
Isn't it out there?
It's always an elementary.
Right.
Right.
So I would just like to say, if Katie or any of my kids' teachers came to me and said, Laura, I need an hour of your time every week to read the kids, I would do it.
Yeah. 100%.
But I think,
would fill out the form, I would
yeah.
go through the background check, like, it's that kind of commitment that a bunch of community, like, again, community outreach would provide. They just would.
I think,
And I get people say it's difficult, like, I've lived it, I've lived it a few times, and by switching gears and appreciating people, one, for showing up is a huge thing, and two, it gets infectious, like, people like helping, they like contributing, they like offering that, and it just grows, and I've seen it, I've personally experienced it, several times in our community here, so it's there if you are approachable and you're willing to work for it. Like, that's the other thing, is you have to put in some effort, you have to have a bumpy road, and you'll have a great outcome, you just will.
what, if I could just sum it up, what I'm hearing is, put words in your mouth, but I'm hearing we're willing to fund at 0.75 if we see a stronger return on investment as we move forward for next year's budget.
Yes.
Is that what I'm hearing?
That is what you're
Whether it's more community outreach, whether it's more revenue streams, whether it's more connections, you want to feel like the money is worth the programming. And we don't disagree with you. I think Jim would agree with you that he knows, he's been, as you can see with the numbers, he's working towards that, and we'll continue to work towards that.
So we want to add, and cut the position to 3/4, but add another responsibility.
Well, it should
Well-
already
No,
be being
it should already
done.
be being done.
Right, but we want more community outreach out of him, right? Because that's not something, I think,
He should be doing that anyway.
he's not doing what you've talked about here. I don't think he's going out and been trying to sign up volunteers to go and come into the school and do various things. That
I don't
hasn't
think that's
been
what they're
part of
asking
his-
him to do.
No.
Well, but you're talking about if you're willing to fund that, so we get more community outreach, where are you gonna get the community outreach?
So I think
Position.
The people that were at Eliminate have come up to 0.75, so I think the question is, the people at 1, are you willing to go to 0.75?
To go to 1.75 instead of a half, or eliminate?
So the people that were at 0.5 or Eliminate have come to 0.75, so are the people that are at a full-time position, are you willing to go to 0.75 so that we all agree?
No, but that's me. I want it full-time. I think it pays for itself in many, many, many ways. You know, part of our mission is lifetime learners, and if we're not gonna provide that ability for people to continue to learn after high school, then we need to change our whole mission statement and everything that we're about, right?
I worked
Because-
hard on that mission statement.
But, huh?
So we're still offering 0.75.
Well, you get 3/4 of something, just eat 3/4 of every one of your meal and only deposit 3/4 of your paycheck. It'll make a difference. It's 3/4, is you lose a quarter of things, you lose a quarter. Take this, it's not,
Just move.
we talked 30,000 in deferred maintenance was insignificant and 33,000 in adult ed in the overall scheme is little, but I think it pays for itself, in my opinion, and we're all entitled to it. It's going to be a board vote on what we're going to present to the voters. And then at the town meeting, the voters will decide whether or not the number, they want to increase it or decrease it. Trouble is, when they decrease it, they don't have any idea on what to take out. They just give you a lower number, similar to your zero budget scenario. And we then have to go out and cut it, and then we'll suffer the consequences because we take something away that they didn't want us to touch.
So I think it's really, really important that we present to them a fiscally, budget that we can all agree on, so that they don't cut it. We've been there too many times.
Well, we're gonna present a budget that sounds like that a majority of the board is going to approve to go forward. It sounds like everything here, there's enough people off and on that we probably won't have a unanimous approval of whatever budget we're gonna go forward, and that's been the case a number of times too.
It has.
So,
It has.
and then it's up to the board chair to sell it at the budget meeting.
Did you know that?
Okay. Oh,
So it sounds like a majority is for the 0.75.
so can I have a hand up of the 0.75?
I have a clarifying question first.
Yep.
Are these weighted votes? I believe they are.
Yeah, they'll be weighted, they will be weighted.
They will
Do
be
you want me to
weighted, right?
calculate this right
Yeah.
now?
Well,
Well, we know already.
you
It's-
can
yeah.
get
Right,
it
I
pretty
just want to
close.
know future,
Yeah, it would,
We're gonna-
every warrant, everything next week will be weighted, yeah.
Every vote is weighted.
every vote is weighted.
So this
Every
is
vote.
just,
So this is getting a feel of next week, it sounds like, from what I'm seeing from the hands, that a majority would do the 0.75.
well, she's asking that
Well,
question.
I saw the
Yeah.
hand, sorry, I saw the hands go up.
That's
Sorry.
what I'm asking.
Okay.
So all your hands up that would support the 0.75. And the full time? So the majority seems like we're at the 0.75. Okay. Was there anything else?
Deferred maintenance.
The deferred maintenance. Thank you.
Reinstate the 30,000
So
Now
thoughts?
we're gonna go back to my point.
Are we yes? All hands up if you're in favor of adding that deferred safety maintenance back into your budget.
To change.
Those that are not.
So that's a majority to put,
That's a
so we'll have to go back and we'll change, let's go back to this. So under maintenance, we will add that to that, yep. Okay.
And the science teacher.
Cost center.
We were all in favor of that.
Yes.
No, there was a
Down my
split,
numbers.
it was a split.
Was it split?
It was a split.
Okay.
Yep.
So can I have hands raised for those who would like to put the science teacher back into the budget, please? Okay. All those who are not in favor? So that will have to be a
That's gonna
raise.
be a close
That
one.
would be
That's
rated,
gonna-
yeah.
And eliminating the 2 elementary teachers. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That's unanimous.
Yep. Do you want us to do the points for science right now?
Yeah, that would be great.
Do you have, I have to go get, we'll have to
Could
get,
we-
we'll have to get the form.
Could we do a halftime science? I know that's, hard to fill, but it's possible.
I think part of it was that some stuff is in the science that could go other places.
Right, so maybe we should move them, and then we might need a math teacher
Right.
instead of a science teacher, right? And maybe we move them out of science, then you won't need the science teacher because they're now in the math department, right?
We're getting a the form for your points. Because right now it's, let's go, we have You have
Two
Sabatis.
Sabatis, one Wales. Right? Two Sabatis and one Wales voted no.
So that won't pass.
No,
It won't pass.
Well, that position will not pass.
no.
Yeah, because where were you, Joe?
I was against.
Against?
No.
You were
She
yes,
was
okay.
for. So it will pass.
So,
It was
I
two
thought there were
Sabatis.
4 no's, but
It
that's
was-
changed than the last time.
Two Wales, two Sabatis. Sorry.
2 Wales, yeah, 2
Against.
Wales, 2 Sabatis.
Again.
Against.
so
Yep.
so it would pass.
It would
It
pass.
would pass.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
so we don't need the calculator.
No, you don't need the
No.
calculator.
Okay, well, there you go.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you,
It
Kathy.
was two Sabatis. and
Okay,
two
so the
Litchfield,
science,
that
so we
passed.
will put in regular instruction, 106,000.
So did it pass? It went through or?
Well, no, I have to put it in because they will vote it in next week. Right. Yep, you will increase your, 106 will be increased to the taxes.
And 31,
And 31, so you're at 142,000. Okay. So, we're good.
30,100.
Yep, so we're up 142,000.
So I want to make sure, though, that before we leave and we adjourn, that we are, I understand there's some contention on some of these issues, but that we are all moving forward into next week with what we have given Katie and Sam.
So no more questions, no more adjustments, is what you're saying? Correct.
You can't tie us to that.
No.
No, but at this point,
I mean,
until.
it probably
like,
will
get
remain
that
what we had
numbers-
tonight, but doesn't
Right,
mean that
because we have to
people,
get those numbers
Doesn't
for
mean
next
people
week.
won't rethink. I'll just have to,
Right.
we'll have the forms, I guess we'll just have to have them online. If you make changes during the meeting, we'll have to reprint everything for signatures.
Can I ask a clarifying question, though? The number I kept writing down for the maintenance was from the middle column.
30,000.
30,100.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
Add it to the 80.
to the 31. Right, I don't know if I added on to something.
So that's 136,100, you said 142, what else?
Because we have 106 plus the maintenance.
30,100, so you said 140, so I just thought maybe I was missing
Yeah,
something.
I think it's like the last 2 columns were 40. That's why I asked the clarifying question. So I think we're at like 130, 137.
So next week,
Right.
we're presenting this to the public?
Oh, no.
We're voting.
We're voting on whether we approve it to go out.
And you need to, yeah, you'll be signing all the warrants.
Right.
Total number was what now, that, with those increases, when?
Okay, so let's go over, we're putting in, yeah, let's go back over it. So we all clear. We're putting in the 30,100 here.
And there's no ARP funds that can help with that?
No.
Could we negotiate that, $1,000, I feel like there's ways we can maybe pay people. I'd be willing to think on mine if it was like 15,000, maybe even 20,000.
I mean, here, the only thing I would say is if we receive the grant, we can do the 30,001.
Into the grant, so we won't have to expend that.
I'm just throwing it out there. If you didn't want to add it in, and then knowing that there is a grant out there, if we don't get the grant, that would not be done. We're also bringing forward next week a reserve account fund for unfund balance that's, we might be considered.
What does that mean?
That means, so we talked about the reserve, so you can put a warrant in to take a portion of your reserve, your unfund balance, and put it into reserve funds, and then approve it to be expended next year.
Okay.
So we don't know where we are at this point. So we've talked to the attorney yesterday about you can do up to 100,000, but you might only be able to put in 20,000. Then you'd only be able to expend 20,000.
So in the past, we've always rejected it
Yep.
for the last 25 years plus. because the taxpayers, current taxpayers put that money in. We should decrease what we tax them in the following year, that same taxpayers, instead of giving taxpayers 20 years from now a break because we've been sticking old taxpayers' money in that to do a building. So we have always taken the complete amount of unexpended fund balance and took it into the budget the following year, because you don't have it when you're building this budget. But we could take in the entire amount of fund balance that was available 2 years ago at the end of that fiscal year. Should go into this budget as to offset the local share. Right? And that's how we've always done it. We couldn't see why, I'm 76, 77 this year, I can pay in taxes and you can put it in the reserve fund and spend it 20 years after I'm dead. But 2 years from now, I'll probably still be alive, and if you reduce my taxes 2 years from now from the money that I put in, I benefit from it. So that's why reserve funds, it's not only, you can have a warrant article to raise $100,000 to stick into a reserve fund for a specific purpose,
Right.
and then you have to go back to a town meeting
Right.
in order to expend it for that. So it's not like it's there in case we lose a boiler that we can just pull it out and use it. You know, it has to be that, has been designated for that particular purpose, and then you have to have a town meeting and referendum to go and authorize you to spend it.
Right, and-
So
but-
we have rejected them every time that they've come to the board as suggestion.
What I'm bringing forward to you next week would not be required for voting for the public. You would be identifying what you would want to, you know, if it's capital improvement plans, in case of emergencies, it can be what you want it to be. It's taking it to plan ahead rather than we don't have enough money.
Two different statutes.
So the attorney has language that they'll be sharing with us.
I'll pull out the statute.
Yep, you can.
It's right here.
It's right.
You got it right there?
And the other towns have
It tells
it.
you how to expend it.
Yes, you can expend it with a vote of the board,
A vote of the board.
Correct.
as long as certain conditions are met.
Certain conditions.
And I have the wording from, I will send out tomorrow. But other school departments have it, and it's not uncommon to have one. And I believe Litchfield's talking about it right now in their town.
They currently are, yes.
Yes.
They're currently talking about adding it into theirs.
Yeah, we've done it in the past in Litchfield for fire trucks and stuff like that.
So our total number
Oh, we do it for
now,
fire truck, too.
our total number now is 22,448,463. Did I say it wrong? I think it's fine. Oh, thank, 22,500,000, what, she's double checking.
How about you just email it to us?
Yeah, just
So,
email
so
it
there's
to
not
us.
a number that's not right out there, just email it to
Correct,
us.
and we'll update
Yeah, email that.
the slide and for, so that the public knows what happened
That'd
this
be
evening.
great.
Okay. All right.
Any
Jill?
other discussion?
I just want to say thank you. I'm so pleased with the way we've all gotten to this point. I just want to thank everyone.
All right, without any objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned at 8:30.